Part 227. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2265. General Meng covered his stomach and took a breath, and after the pain eased, he asked, "Has the person who asked for help gone?" "Nikanjun, leave early. There are 3 people in total, light cavalry, with only water and letters. They should be able to reach Jiaokang for help within 3 days. General Meng exhaled a breath, and after begging with the gods and Buddhas in the sky, he remembered, "Is there a monk in your motorcade?" "No, it's an eminent monk." "Man Bao, yeah, what's wrong?" General Meng coughed lightly. "Please invite him over. How about I ask the Buddha and Bodhisattva in front of him?" A few people in full treasure. They didn't think the idea was a good idea, so they all rode away. Seeing that they were all gone, General Meng pouted, leaning on the car a little unhappy. There were Zhou Man and Zhou Liru in the team, and the medicinal materials they brought were complete and sufficient, so everyone recovered well, and after walking for 2 days, most of the people with minor injuries could run wild. Naturally, it wasn't perfect, but the pain was within the tolerable range, and he could wield a sword, so Nai joined the army and let them mount. He felt that the Tubo reinforcements who did not know when they would catch up were a very serious crisis. Even if they were injured, they had to try their best to keep themselves alive and others to live, so even if they were injured, they had to adapt to it right away. The speed of their march was not very slow, and they deliberately shortened the noon break, so the speed was still very good. On the 3rd day, Nikanjun stood on horseback on a high desert and looked into the distance. Said, "If there is no accident, we can reach Jiaokang tomorrow. From here, I seem to see Jiaokang city." Man Bao also stood beside him on horseback, and then looked up for a while. "You read it wrong, there are only clouds over there." Bai Shan silently pointed to their right and said, "Gao Chang is over there." Man Bao was embarrassed for a moment, turned to look, and after a long time nodding, "Sure enough, I'm still far away, I didn't see anything." Nikanjun's face turned red, but because his face was dark, he couldn't see it clearly. He quietly glanced at Zhou Man and then at Bai Shan, feeling that he was not being laughed at, so he nodded and said, "Yes, it's still far away, can't see anything." The convoy passed under the sand slope. Bai Erlang lifted the curtain and glanced at the high sand slope. He immediately lowered the curtain. The wind has been a little strong recently, and the sand is blowing everywhere, which is annoying. Bai Erlang really wanted to go out to play, but he didn't want to go out to bask in the sun. The sun is so big. What did they say on the dunes? How did they say it took so long? "Yin," he said, "if you are interested, you can follow along." Bai Erlang glanced out and shook his head, "Forget it, I'm not Nikanjun and I don't even wink at all." Yin or could not help laughing out loud. Nikanjun, who Bai Erlang thought had no wink, smiled and was about to go down the sand dunes, leaving this space for the 2 of them, when suddenly Daji pointed to the distance and asked, "Master, Miss Man, look." The 2 of them turned their heads to look in the direction he pointed, because it was too far away, and they couldn't see the specifics, but they could still see the raised dust. But Nai joined the army with experience. He could see it at a glance. It was the movement of a large number of soldiers and horses. Glancing at Gao Chang's direction, then turning his head to look in the opposite direction, he immediately said, "It might be an enemy attack, let everyone pay attention to avoid it, hurry. It's all desert, how do they hide?" But Manbao and the others rushed down the dunes quickly, shouting and warning. Nikanjun also knew that he couldn't hide in the desert, so he turned his head and said to Zhou Man, "Sir, leave your luggage, and you immediately go to Jiaokang for help." Man Bao said, "I am the chief officer, how can I leave the team and escape by myself?" "But you are a civil official, not a military officer," said Nikanjun. "Sir, what we have to do on our mission to the western regions this time is only you can do." It is important to find the anti-epidemic prescription for smallpox. Man Bao pursed his lips and couldn't help looking at Bai Shan. Bai Shan didn't want to run away by himself, so he held her hand and said, "Let them go first, sir, and we will stay with you." Nikanjun couldn't help but stare at Bai Shan, thinking that this person is a rosy, a blue-faced disaster. Sure enough, as soon as Bai Shan opened his mouth, Man Bao immediately became firm. "I'll stay." After thinking for a while, she comforted again, "If we really can't do anything, we will run away. Don't worry, we will never take care of you." Nikanjun, it doesn't have to be like this. Masters Hiran also rushed over, and he said to them, "If it is a tubo soldier, I might be able to give it a try." "How to try?" Chi Nin said, "I can use the Dharma to inspire them. A few people in full treasure." Seeing this, Zhiran couldn't help but smile, "But you need some disguise, you all need to replace your armor, don't bring anything with the Jinjun logo, you need to refit a car, do you have any Buddhist artifacts in your luggage?" Man Bao and Bai Shan looked at each other, and they really did. They almost took all the Buddhist utensils when the bandits were divided. Because they knew that the countries in the western regions believed in Buddhism, they thought that it would not be at a loss to take the Buddhist utensils to the western regions, and there were not many, so they chose it. At this time, Zhiran needed it, and Manbao nodded to indicate yes. Zhiran just asked, "But I didn't expect them to actually exist," and he was surprised and said, "That's easier, let's do it, for a while you pretend to be the boys and girls who serve me, this team is mine, you look at Jin Kuyan and the others. It's tight, the other Turkic prisoners are kept outside, it's better to change them into better clothes." Because people are still a little far away, Zhiran's instructions are a little more detailed. Bai Shan finally understood after listening for a while. These people are all servants who serve Zhiran and abstain from anger. He and Manbao glanced at each other, although not sure if it would be of any use, but turned around to make arrangements. Lu Huan's carriage, which had not been specially modified, was disassembled. Manbao took out brightly colored silk and satin for the guards. After they removed the blue cloth cover, they hung the silk and satin on it. Zhou Liru carefully fiddled with the satin and veil to make them look more natural and beautiful. Mr. Zhuang also changed his clothes, and after communicating with Masters Hiran, he understood what he was going to do. He turned around and glanced at the ignorant captives, and said to Manbao, "Let the guards take out their best clothes and put them on, and they will change the tattered clothes on the captives." Manbao hesitated to convey the order. The guards went to grab the clothes of the captives in a daze, and then gave the other party the good clothes they had collected with a distressed look. God knows how reluctant they are. These people don't know how long it has been since they took a bath. They can smell the smell not long ago, not to mention that they are going to wear clothes that they don't have. See you at noon. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2266. Masters Hiran checked it and thought it was fine, so he took out his luggage and changed into a monk's robe, and sat in the car with the gauze and satin with Jiyan. He pointed to his suitcase and Zhou Man Bai Shandao. "It's a gift I received when I traveled to the western regions. There are several musical instruments in it. You can take them out and play with them." Manbao curiously opened the suitcase and took out a small pipa, but unfortunately she couldn't play it, while Bai Shan rummaged through and found a pipe, similar to a flute. Jahan saw that none of them could, so he stretched out his hand to take the violin in Manbao's hand and said, "This is dongbula, and the sound of the violin is very nice. He can play some, although not as good as master, but also pleasant to the ear." The sound of the piano ding ding dong dong sounded. It was a very simple Buddhist music. Manbao and the others had heard it, and they would hum a few words along with it. There are also many people among the horse thieves who worship Buddha. This music is widely spread, and they have all heard it. They have no time to think about what they are doing, so they become silent, and their mood gradually calms down with the Buddha music, temporarily forgetting the current situation. The convoy started to move again and continued to move towards Jiaokang. There was only the sound of dongbur ding ding dong dong playing in the queue. When the soldiers and horses in the distance came galloping, the sound of the violin did not stop, but the carriage stopped. Down. Mr. Zhuang stood next to Wei Xingren and encouraged him to go forward and ask questions. There was no way. Of all the people, his Hu language was the best, and he could speak all kinds of Hu language. Well, except that he is Master's Hiren, but it's not easy to let Master's Hiren come, so Wei Xingren can fight first. Little General Meng also knelt on the carriage. He also changed into his regular clothes. At this time, he was acting as a servant of Ji Ren. The most important people were concentrated in these carriages, so that they could escape together in case of an accident. He quickly glanced at the galloping soldiers and horses, lowered his voice and said to Bai Shan, who was kneeling in front of him, "It's really a Tubo soldier, Grandma. Jing Kuyan is sick, his master was killed by Tubo, he actually cooperated with Tubo." Bai Shan's mouth moved slightly and said in a low voice, "As long as the benefits are sufficient. And that's just the master, not the parents, what's wrong?" Jing Kuyan's surname was given to him by himself, and Ba Zhou didn't seem to be very kind to him, and he didn't even give him a surname. Little General Meng stopped talking, and when he saw the rushing soldiers and horses duel stopped, he raised his head and looked at them generously, glanced at the people on horses, and then squinted to see that they were still rising in the distance. He lowered his voice again and said in a low voice, "The cavalry is about 800, and the infantry behind should be about 1,200. I will go. We just took a step forward and couldn't escape. They are just so few people, not to mention the infantry behind, the 800 cavalry alone can kill them, and it will only take a moment to catch up with them." Bai Shan is also glad that he didn't run away just now. In the desert, he can close his sight for a while, but it becomes more difficult in the distance. As long as he finds enough high points, it is easy to spot the fleeing person. And Mr. Zhuang and the others are obviously not suitable for hiding under the sand with them. They are a bit too young to be so young. The Tubo soldiers who wanted to charge directly only stopped when they saw Zhiren in the car. Although they did not share the sky with Dajin, they had no hatred with the monks, especially the monks in the western regions. On the contrary, the two sides had the same lineage of intimacy. Not to mention that the leader of the army this time was Qiangba of Tubo. He glanced at Master's Hiren, then looked at their team, kicked the horse's stomach, stepped forward and bent slightly, rubbing his chest. "Salute, I don't know the name of the venerable." Wei Xingren, who managed to summon up the courage to take a step forward to speak, suddenly wilted and looked up at Zhiren. Ji Ren smiled slightly, and gave him a soothing nod before he smiled with Qiangba, "The poor monk's name is Ji Ren." His eyes slid across Jampa's wrist and asked with a smile, "This donor is serving Maitreya Buddha?" Qiangba's eyes lit up, his waist was even more bent, and he said proudly, "Hui Venerable, my name is Qiangba." In Tubo, Qiangba means Maitreya Buddha. It can be seen that not only him, but also his family members are more convinced of Maitreya Buddha. Zhiren nodded slightly, and discussed with him about Maitreya Buddha's 5 theories. Qiangba obviously believed in Maitreya Buddha. Only the Mahayana Majestic Sutra and Vajraprajna Sutra were half discussed with Zhiren. An hour. Manbao and the others raised their hearts high at first, but now they have already fallen. Half an hour has passed, and they didn't move at all, and their legs were numb. Several people complained in their hearts, but their kneeling and sitting movements remained the same. Although Manbao and Bai Shan didn't quite understand the two of them talking about Buddha, they could look at people's faces and see that Qiangba became more and more relaxed. More and more respectful, the two looked at each other quietly. Nikanjun's tense body also slowly relaxed, otherwise he would have cramped for so long. Bai Erlang, who was hiding in the carriage, exhaled a few breaths. When he looked up, he saw that Jinkuyan, who was lying on his stomach, had a rhythm of waking up. He immediately took out the medicine bag given by Manbao and covered his mouth and nose, but moved to wake up. Jinkuyan, who was turning around, moved a bit, then fell down and went quiet again. Face to face with Jinkuyan, Ergo, who was not far away, didn't move, as if he didn't wake up, but Bai Erlang also put the medicine bag that had just stunned Jinkuyan over his nose and mouth. When Lu Huan saw it, he lowered his voice and asked, "What are you doing? He didn't wake up." Bai Erlang said, "It should be almost the same." They were all stunned at the same time. Jinkuyan is about to wake up. How long can he be? He complained, "The medicine pack has to be placed in a box and placed on the stove to heat it up. It's a lot of trouble going up and down, isn't it bad to cover two at a time?" Lu Huan, "What if something goes wrong?" Yin Orki, who had been silent for a while, couldn't help persuading him, "Stop arguing, we know what we should know, it's not very useful to keep him, there's something wrong." The rest of the words slowly faded away and blurred, and Ergo could no longer hear them. Yin Or looked at the two people lying down, then looked at the two people sitting, and said in a low voice, "Don't make any noise, it's going to happen outside." Bai Erlang and the others pricked up their ears to listen. Sure enough, the outside world had stopped talking about Buddha, and Kyangba was asking where's Hiran was, and by the way invited him to teach in his fief in Tubo. The nonsense that Jamba spoke happened to be something they had learned before, and they could understand it, but they didn't quite understand Buddhist principles. They all find it difficult when Buddhist scriptures are in Chinese characters, let alone when it is in Hu language. But they understood this kind of ordinary conversation, so they cheered up and listened to Zhiran's answer. Zhiran thanked Kyangba for his invitation, and said that he would definitely go there if he had the chance, and then said, "The 5th day of the 10th lunar month is Patriarch Bodhidharma's birthday. Buddhists from all over are invited to go to Jeokang to discuss Buddhahood. The poor monk misses Bodhi in the state temple because of his memory issue, so I went to prepare ahead of time, and I also wanted to have a hand-to-hand talk with Venerables Hai Hao from Dabolu. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2267. Kyangba didn't know Zhiran, nor had he heard of Zhiran's name, but he was very fond of Zhi Hao, and he also knew that Gao Chang was currently at a method meeting to prepare for the annual birth of Bodhidharma. And just now Zhiran also proved his ability by talking about Buddha, and because he and Zhi Hao are both of the wise generation, so Kyangba has no doubts. Although he regretted it, he didn't stop him. He only lamented that their fate was too shallow. Ji Ren smiled and said, "The relationship was shallow at the time, which does not mean that the relationship cannot be deep in the future. The donor, the time is not early, and the poor monk has to leave first." Kyangba nodded regretfully again, but before leaving, he still asked, "Have you seen other teams on the road, or a horse team?" Ji Ren sighed and said, "Donor, the poor monk has never met before, and even if I did, I wouldn't tell you. We are already outside the world, but human life is a pity, and I hope the donor will kill less evil in the future." Obviously it was a bad word, but Kyangba became more and more respectful. He didn't ask about the convoy and the horse team, but gave a solemn salute and said, "I also ask your venerable person not to mention me after entering Jeokang." Chi Ren sighed and agreed, and said again, "This is something in your world." So Kyangba let them go, and he rode on his horse and watched them respectfully as they walked away. When they were far away, Kyangba turned around. He gathered up the reinforcements who had caught up and chose to go east, which is where Zhiren and the others came from. Qiangba said, it was too late when we received the information, but if Jin Kuyan and the others were chasing someone, they should be able to catch up a little bit ahead. Let's go and see what treasures he got. General, didn't Jin Kuyan only promise to join forces with us? Would he be willing to give us the treasure? As long as we have enough people, it doesn't matter if he wants it or not. Qiangba led the people along the way of Zhiren and the others. After running for a while, he gradually felt that something was wrong, and he couldn't help but stop the horse and look back. The sand dune he was on was relatively high, and he could take in a long distance here. At this time, Zhiren and their team only had a small spot left. He narrowed his eyes, feeling a little uneasy. Why is this venerable only a monk with him? His personal soldier said, perhaps the monks are valuable and he can't afford them. There are two types of monks in the western regions, one is ascetic and the other is extravagant, and it is obvious that this one is the latter. The most powerful and wealthy monks are protected by monks and soldiers, and monks serve. Only those who are not so arrogant but like to be ostentatious will buy some slaves to serve by their side. However, looking at the team that had condensed into a black spot and was about to disappear from their sight, Qiangba felt more and more that something was wrong. Suddenly, his eyes narrowed and he remembered one thing. No, even one, there are no yellow cloth strips, but they can ride one by one, and even some people can ride two by one. They are pretending. Hurry up and chase. Before he found out, after they had just walked for a while, Zhiren and Zhou and others said, let them speed up, let's run quickly. Manbao asked him as he informed him, we were discovered. No, but the poor monk thinks it won't last long. His eyes swept across the motorcade. It was too hasty, and there were flaws everywhere. Not to mention, there were so many beautiful veils and satins on their cars, but not a single one. Yellow is so fake. Manbao and Bai Shan glanced at each other, then jumped out of the car, and behind Daji and the guards led their horses and ran up to them. The two got on their horses and ran to knock on Bai Erlang's carriage. Come down and ride, throw Jin Kuyan and Ergo on the luggage cart, let Yin or Chang Shao take a car, let's go faster. So a carriage ran out of the line, and the unconscious Jin Kuyan and Ergo were dragged off and thrown into the luggage cart. Manbao directly let people lose a few boxes on the luggage cart. The guards knew that some of the suitcases were filled with stones and hay. Although they didn't know which one was and which one was not, since Miss Man had designated them, they would obey. After dropping 2 boxes, Jin Kuyan and Ergo threw casually on the car, and everyone maintained their formation and continued to run. Bai Erlang and Lu Huanzhou Liru both rode on their horses, trying their best to keep the speed around the convoy. Keek suddenly said to Manbao, there are soldiers and horses in front, a total of about 1,500 people, and there are flags with the Chinese characters Jin on them. Manbao was overjoyed, it's ours. At this moment, Nai Kenjun gave a warning and shouted, they found out that they are chasing, come here, protect Lord Zhou and leave, hurry up. Manbao glanced back, and sure enough, the 2 Bo soldiers and horses, who had been thrown far away by them, galloped towards them, and the billowing dust floated up, apparently finding something abnormal. But the 2 sides have been in opposite directions for a period of time, and it is not easy to catch up. All the carriages loaded with seriously wounded soldiers left the convoy, and the 3 carriages of Yin He and Mr. Zhuang Wei Xinggren also came out. Manbao turned his head and glanced at Nai Kenjun and the many soldiers who were slowing down. Leave first. The guards followed the horses, and a group of horses and carriages slowly ran at the front of the team. Zhiren kept sighing, and their carriages were naturally included in the preferential treatment. Fortunately, it was not a waste of time to fight for half an hour and a long distance. Manbao turned back and shouted at Nai Jianjun, the reinforcements are here. Nai Kenjun didn't believe it, but when he raised his head, he narrowed his eyes and saw that there was indeed wind and sand floating in the distance. Although he couldn't see anyone, the movements were the same as those of the Tubo soldiers. Whether it was or not, Nikanjun simply shouted and shouted, "Everyone rush in the direction of Jao Kang, hurry!" Kyangba, who was running with all his strength to chase people, saw that he couldn't catch up with them, and was even more convinced that they had been deceived, so he was even more annoyed that these wicked people used the Buddha to deceive him. Seeing that the distance was getting shorter and shorter, some personal soldiers shouted, "General, they have reinforcements." It's a pity that Jamba didn't listen at all and continued to charge forward. The flag bearer only looked at Jamba, and when he saw the general charging forward, he naturally rushed forward. The soldiers followed the flag, and they went wherever the flag went. So the two sides are getting closer and closer, getting closer. Seeing that they were close enough, Bai Shan said to Nikanjun, "Cut off the luggage of the last 3 cars, give up the luggage, and avoid driving." Nikanjun had no time to question. Seeing that Bai Shan and Zhou Man were only a little ahead of them at speed, he gritted his teeth and gave the order. The coachman on the carriage cut the ropes, and jumped agilely on the horse's back, directly overtaking the front. Luggage cart ran away. The soldiers behind were already prepared, and immediately dispersed on both sides to avoid the falling boxes. As soon as they avoided, the Tibetan cavalrymen who were about to catch up were stopped by a box that suddenly appeared, and some people even fell off their horses accidentally. See you at 4 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2268. As the distance got closer, Nikanjun pulled out his long knife and shouted at Bai Shan and Zhou Man, "Come on." After speaking, he ordered, "Brothers, use your swords to stop the enemy, our reinforcements are here, it only takes half a quarter of an hour." Bai Shan only turned his head to look at him. He was still being chased by the cavalry, and he couldn't turn around to kill him. Once he turned around and couldn't even react, he would be killed. Nikanjun obviously knew this, and was ready to take lives to fill their way. Bai Shan turned his head to Man Bao and said, "You are the chief officer, let them split up and escape." Because it was a fast horse and the wind was so loud that Man Bao could hardly hear him, she turned her head and shouted, "No, if you flee like this, your morale will be greatly affected." Bai Shandao, but if you can live a little longer, the reinforcements will arrive in a little while, and they will have their morale. Man Bao was willing, but Nikanjun was obviously unwilling. This was a shame, and the soldiers had their own arrogance. Instead of obeying Zhou Man and Bai Shan's orders, they sped up and rushed forward, then split to the two flanks. Turning around, but not directly forward, but speeding up the horse to bypass, turn around, and directly meet the Tubo army. When Man Bao and Bai Shan looked back while escaping, they were led by Nikanjun and Meng Xiaojun and divided into 2 wings. They turned around and attacked, rushing into the Tubo army like 2 sharp knives, and the 2 armies were strangled together in an instant. Man Bao held back his tears with all his might, and he Bai Shan sped away to leave. The Tubo army was only stopped for a moment, and immediately the Chinese army branched out to continue chasing them. They were fast, but they rushed up in a moment. Bai Shan and Man Bao took De Ji and other guards to stay behind and swept the formation. Their palms were so nervous that they were sweating. The trip to the western regions was too dangerous. Why is the western region so dangerous? The thought flashed by, and the sound of horses' hooves came from the sand dunes, and they finally saw the approaching reinforcements. The Angzi army's long sword came out of its sheath, sprinted down from the sand dune, and charged down with murderous aura. Man Bao and Bai Shan were stunned by the murderous aura, and Qi Ji and Thief Li also neighed in shock. The army quickly passed by her and went directly to meet the Tubo army behind them. Qi Ji and Thief Li habitually ran forward for a certain distance before stopping. The 2 restrained their horses and turned around to see that the cavalry of Dajin who had rushed down had already fought with the cavalry of Tubo. After the past, he went into battle, and then re-entered the battle, so back and forth, the Tubo army was instantly dispersed. Man Bao and Bai Shan looked at each other blankly, and they couldn't help but look at each other, and they both felt a big sigh of relief. When the infantry arrived, although they were running over, there was no confusion in the team. Holding the Mo Dao and the Changke axe in their hands, they followed the order and pushed forward from the flank. Long swordsmanship, not to mention that the Tubo cavalry can't draw their hands to defend against the opponent's infantry. Even if they draw their hands, I'm afraid they can't help much. The Angzi infantry faced the Tubo infantry, almost like harvesting cabbage, destroying the front. Bai Erlang, who ran far away, rode his horseback tick-tock and watched the battlefield with Bai Shan and the others. Seeing the flesh and blood flying, he slightly opened his eyes and asked, "Should we step back?" Bai Shan squeezed the reins and asked, "Do you feel like your blood is boiling?" Bai Erlang, "I just want to vomit." Man Bao glanced at him, turned his horse's head to chase the carriage, and said, "Let's take a medical account." As a doctor, that's all she can do, nothing else. Bai Shan glanced at the battlefield, and could only suppress his mood and follow the medical bill. The one who led the troops to the rescue was Guo Zhao, the eldest son of Guo Xiao, the protector of Angzi. When I came out, I found that a tent was set up on the leeward side of the sand dunes, and all the wounded soldiers who had retreated from the battlefield were sent here. He paused, stopped a soldier and asked, "Did we bring a military doctor?" General Meng touched the reopened belly, covered it, and said to him, "It's the Imperial Dr. Zhou of the Imperial Hospital, and also the chief officer of the mission. Why, you came to support and you don't even know who you are saving." Guo Zhao said with a bewildered face, "No, the soldier who went back to ask for help said that you were targeted by the Tubo army on the road, and I came to save you." After all, it was their father and son and Shazhu who asked for help, and they all brought troops to support them. When they encountered the Tubo army, they let people do nothing, so he urgently brought people to rescue General Meng. He immediately turned to look for Nikanjun. Nikanjun was also injured, and was being held from behind while covering his wounds. Hearing them speak, he endured the pain and replied, "Young Master Bai told me so, but I didn't say anything." Guo Zhao turned his head and asked General Meng, "Who is young Master Bai?" General Meng sighed and said, "It's the fiancé of Imperial Physician Zhou." Guo Zhao was a little disgusted. "When you go out on business, you bring relatives? And this is not a relative, right?" Little General Meng then added, "I'm also a student of Chongguan Hall. I heard that I passed the Jinshi examination last year." Guo Zhao. He grabbed his neck and shook it. "Can you stop panting when you speak?" He asked, "What are the students of Kongwengan here doing? Let's talk about it first. We Angzi only listen to His Majesty's orders." "You think too much," said General Meng. "They didn't even attract us at Yumengwan. They took the opportunity to come and study abroad. Real or fake?" General Meng sighed. "Do you know how long it took them to travel from Liangzhou to our Yumen Pass?" Guo Zhao thought for a while. 10 days. Little General Meng smiled. Guo Zhao, 8 days, it can't be any less. They have so much luggage, it takes 8 days for the urgent march to arrive, right? General Meng said, 36 days. Guo Zhao, they belong to tortoises. That's why I said they were studying abroad. Don't worry, no one wants to pull you Angzi army into the camp, and what can you attract? General Meng was disgusted. Look at you all taking control of the western regions. What's going on? East and west are one piece, and there is a little turbulence, and that one is not stupid, and the great place in the central plains will not be drawn, and if you come to draw you, this bird will not poop, and the western regions that have not yet become a piece. Shut up, no matter how bad you manage it, I will save you this time, Guo Zhao said. Gao Chang has only been beaten for a few years, and it's good that my father can gather so many places to squeeze the Western Turks into broken leaves. You Yumengwan or in the customs, Isn't there a rampant of bandits? General Meng said, it should be almost done by now. Don't worry, it won't take 2 months, this trade route will be prosperous again. Otherwise, my father will not let me bring troops to support you Angzi. The two walked to the medical account, shoulder to shoulder, but they didn't meet Zhou Man and Bai Shan because they were too busy. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2269. So Guo Zhao unilaterally stood on the side and got to know Zhou Man. He happened to see Zhou Man taking a saw and sawing off a soldier's leg. There was a lot of blood on her hands and body, but also on her face. Blood. The soldier whose leg was sawed off wailed, and a teenager who was not much older than her squatted on the side and pressed his thigh hard, and the blood slowed down at a speed visible to the eyes. Guo Zhao was stunned. Is this still alive? It was the first time that General Meng saw such a thing, and he was too shocked. Then, like Guo Zhao, Zhou Man, and Bai Shan, who were busy with their heads down, shuddered together, and secretly said, ruthless. One thought, don't look at it as a little lady, she looks more cruel than their men. Another thought, don't they all say that Confucian scholars are quiet? Is this quiet? Since then, the two will not dare to despise each other in the future. Man Bao did not officially meet Guo Zhao until dawn the next day. Both Mr. Zhuang and Zhiren helped treat the wounded soldiers. They were old and went to bed in the early morning, but didn't get up at that time. The young people are full of energy. Although they still want to sleep, there are no tents here. The carriages have been given to the seriously wounded soldiers. Can only get up. So a group of young people stood on the sand and greeted each other. By the way, Guo Zhao himself was the first to come. When he introduced him from the Suzhu Guo family, Lu Huan couldn't help but look up at each other. Then there was Man Bao, who introduced her name and official position, while Bai Shan introduced his most common identity, a student of Kongwengan. Bai Erlang followed closely, and only used this identity. Yin He also used this identity, and Lu Huan followed closely without a single extra sentence. To sum up, we are all students of Chongwen Museum. General Meng felt that they could not do this, so he pointed to Yin or introduced, this is the only son of Commander Yin. While speaking, he winked at Guo Zhao. Guo Zhao. Although his eyes hurt, he still understood that there was only one Yin commander in the Manchu dynasty. He couldn't help but look at Yin or, he was so good looking, but his stature was not enough, his face was pale and weak, very sick, and he didn't know whether to envy or regret for a while. General Meng then introduced Lu Huan with a smile, this is Lu Shangshu's grandson. Guo Zhao smiled and saluted. After salute, he always felt that something was wrong, but he couldn't remember what was wrong. It was at this time that General Meng introduced that Bai Erlang was the emperor's future son-in-law, or his son-in-law. He turned his head back to look at Lu Huan, hesitated for a moment and then said, Lu Shangshu, is that the minister of the household? Seeing that he seemed to remember, Lu Huan smiled embarrassedly and said, yes. He paused and saluted, I have seen my cousin. Bai Shan and Man Bao were shocked, why did they suddenly recognize relatives? Little General Meng was also surprised, looking at Guo Zhao with the same eyes as a heartless man. Guo Zhao was heartbroken by this look, and said, Lu Shangshu's wife is our Guo's aunt. Lu Huan also explained to Bai Shan and the others, my grandmother is from the Guo family in Suzhu. Then why haven't I heard you say it? When they dispersed, Bai Shan and Bai Erlang clamped him on the left and right, and sighed, our study tour is the way of visiting relatives for others. The other said, and he hasn't said it yet. Man Bao and Yin or Zhou Li on the side nodded in agreement. Lu Huan quickly explained, if he hadn't mentioned that he was from Suzhu, I would have almost forgotten about this relationship. Bai Shan was puzzled, it doesn't seem that the relationship is very far away, why did you forget it? Lu Huan tilted his head and thought, but he didn't realize that he basically didn't care about family affairs, he only needed to be responsible for eating, drinking, and not causing trouble. How did he know? Anyway, boxing comes from Suzhou and other places every year, but not once from Angzi. Bai Shan smiled and said, Angzi was only awarded 2 years ago. Gao Chang used to belong to someone else, so General Guo should be working elsewhere, right? Anyway, I don't get Guo Xiao's gifts every year. Guo Xiao is the protector of Angzi and the father of Guo Zhao. Lu Huan didn't understand it, but Guo Zhao understood. He said to General Meng, my father has a very bad relationship with Lu Shangzhu. Well, he doesn't have a good relationship with Mr. Lu from Suzhou. General Meng didn't understand, why, it's just a foreign family, no matter how polite you are, you still need it. There is also a conflict of interests between different races. Guo Zhao was at a loss for words, and after a while he said, I don't say anything to my father, anyway, Lu Shangzhu doesn't like my father's style, he impeached my father in the court before, and when he attacked Zhao Kang, His Majesty originally wanted my father and the Ho Ji was in charge, but because of Lu Shangzhu's impeachment, my father became Ho Ji's deputy. After Zhao Kang was defeated, His Majesty changed the name of Zhao Kang to Zizhu, and let my father temporarily act as the military and political office of Zizhu. It was only 2 years ago that the capital of Angzi was officially established. Protector, my father became the protector. Otherwise, when his father returns to the capital, there is something about Ho Ji's rebellion, I am afraid he will also sit on the bench. General Meng pondered for a while, and then whispered, so the contradiction between the two of them is still the fault of my uncle. Guo Zhao. He was silent. General Meng understood, patted him on the shoulder sympathetically, and asked, what do you want to take him home? Is it a relative, and his grandmother is your aunt? If anything, no, it's not your Guo family's reason to send it back to the capital, right? Guo Zhao said very single, I'm fine, I don't know if Lu Huan is willing or not. Is he willing to be of any use? Will General Guo be willing? Guo Zhao's face was a little weird, and he was silent for a while before saying, if my father knew his identity, I'm afraid he would be very willing. Not only will it be willing, but I'm afraid it will be a big fanfare. That's why Guo Zhao hesitated, should he mention Lu Huan's identity? Fortunately, General Guo didn't let Guo Zhao struggle for too long, because he already knew. This battle was fought beautifully, not only killed a Tubo general, but also captured a lot of soldiers. Except for those who fled, both the number of prisoners and the number of casualties of the opponent are very good. Therefore, as soon as the war was over, Guo Zhao sent people back to report, and by the way told his father that they came out this time not only to support the Shazhu army, but also to save the envoy sent by the imperial court to the western regions. As soon as he heard that it was an envoy sent by the imperial court, General Guo immediately asked in detail. The soldiers who sent back and forth to talk back didn't know much, but when they left, in order to report the military situation in more detail, they inquired about the detailed information of the envoy. Therefore, everyone's name and origin are clearly stated. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2270. When General Guo heard that one of them was Lu Shangzhu's grandson, he immediately stroked his beard and laughed. After laughing for a while, his eyes glowed coldly and said, it's just right, we two are still relatives, since my nephew came to the western regions, how can I be negligent as an uncle? Come on, go to the city gate the day after tomorrow to welcome the distinguished guests into the city. They also sent people to prepare the yard and house, intending to leave Lu Huan and others in the mansion to live. With the wounded soldiers, they took more than half an hour to arrive. A tall city appeared in front of them. This was the first large city they had seen in the western regions for so long, so they all speeded up. General Meng restrained his horse, pointed the two characters Zizhu on the city gate and read, "Gaochang, we finally arrived at Jiaokang. Bai Shan and several people." They looked up at the two big characters on the city gate. Bai Shan frowned, and couldn't help asking, "Zikang, Ba, why does the word Zizhu look a little golden? It won't be gilded, right?" Guo Zhao on the side said, "It's not gold-plated, but it does have some yellow." He said, "As you all know, Jiaokang believed in Buddhism. In order to win the hearts of the people, my father made people pay more attention to using yellow, gold and copper. We dare not use it on the city gate, but there is a kind of stone in the goba that is used for grinding. The powdered water that comes out is yellow, and the color is very similar to gold, so my father asked me to smear it on the city gate." Guo Zhao added, "Not only the two big characters on the city gate, but also some Buddha statues in the national temple are also painted with this kind of paint. Whether you look at it from close up or from a distance, they are golden and bright, and they are very beautiful." They introduced them here, and the people who had been waiting at the city gate trotted to meet them. "Major General, Meng Xiao General, General, let us pick you up." After he finished speaking, he looked at Bai Shan and the others, his eyes slid over them, but he couldn't recognize who was Mr. Lu, so he bent down and smiled. "It's the lords of the mission, the general has prepared a guest room at home, I'll take you to rest. After all, I will invite them into the city." Bai Shan, who didn't know much about the relationship between the Lu family and Guo's family, really wanted to make a fuss about the Lu family's relationship at first, but after seeing this person, Bai Shan and Man Bao immediately dismissed the idea. Bai Shan smiled and looked at Man Bao. Man Bao turned his head and smiled at Guo Zhao. "Thank you for General Guo's hospitality for me, but there are many people in the embassy, so we won't come to the door for the time being, and we will visit when we settle down." After saying that, she turned her head and nodded slightly to Nikanjun, indicating that the convoy entered the city, and they wanted to find a post station to stay there. If the post station was not good enough, they had to find an inn. The steward didn't expect this, so he hurriedly stopped in front of the horse. "Oh, what is this little lady in such a hurry?" Bai Shan frowned, bold, "Sir Joe is the envoy of the mission, how could you easily stop him?" After speaking, he looked at Guo Zhao not very happy. Guo Zhao's face sank immediately, and he scolded Guan Shi, "Let's get out of the way." The steward hesitated and gave a small step, but he was still in front of the horse. He flattered Guo Zhao with a smile, "Lang Jun, this is what the general meant, if the envoys don't stay, it will be difficult for Xiao Hui to explain to the general." "Ah." Man Bao seemed to be smiling but not smiling and said, "Why, do I have to obey your orders? I can't enter the city if I don't listen." The steward hurriedly said, "Your Excellency has misunderstood. It is our general who cares about young Master Biao, so we want to entertain the adults. If the adults do not go, then young Master Biao may come with us, so that we can explain to the general when we come back." Bai Shan sat right away and said with a smile, "I didn't expect the relationship between the two families to be so good, but I didn't expect it. Why don't you guess which one of us is your cousin? You're right, how about he just go back to live with you? Lu Huan. How could you pit him like this?" The steward also froze. How could he dare? These gentlemen are of similar age, and their temperament is also 1-to-1. How can you tell? By the way, how old is their cousin? It's better to take a look at Guo Zhao, and want the young master to give him a hint. But how could Guo Zhao help his father do such a thing? He wanted his father to stay away from these people, so he turned his head away and ignored him. The steward broke out in cold sweat, opened his mouth but was speechless. Bai Shan snorted, "It seems that the relationship between the two families is nothing more than that. Since this is the case, we can't bother General Guo. We will live in the city. I don't think the city is very big. It's still easy for the general's ability to find us, right? After saying that, he took 2 steps forward and stared at him to let him leave. The steward went to see Guo Zhao again, and when he saw Guo Zhao frowning, he couldn't help but look forward to it, but who knew that Guo Zhao reprimanded him, "Don't get out of the way, didn't you see that the messengers are going to the city to rest?" The steward was discouraged and could only slump his head to the side. But he didn't dare to leave it alone. After the envoys had entered, he immediately followed, wanting to see where they lived. As soon as he caught up with the heavy rain, he ran after him, and said to Zhou Man, "People are following." Man Bao nodded indifferently, and was staring at both sides of the street with interest. Zhao Kang, "Oh no, it's Zizhu. Zizhu is very lively. There are many stalls and shops on both sides of the street. Unlike the turmoil outside, it seems to be very prosperous." Seeing so many people in their ranks, many people's eyes all stuck to them and to the luggage cart behind them. Steward Li had already brought people to the front, and when they slowly walked to the middle of the street, Steward Li returned, "Master, Miss Man, the little one has made a reservation at the post station and the inn next to the post station. Room, the aggrieved young masters will stay there for one night, and then find a place to stay." Man Bao understood, nodded, and followed behind Li Guanqi. The inn in Zizhu city is not remote or even simple. It was once used by the Zhao Kang royal family to entertain envoys from various countries. Naturally, it is not too bad. It's just that because it's not too bad, the rules are bigger than the general inn. It's not a big problem for Zhou Man and the others to live in, but it's difficult for the soldiers to follow them all. So Steward Li set a spot in the inn next to him. After entering the station, everyone went to rest, because they were notified in advance that they would change places to live later, so the luggage was still in the car, and Nikanjun directly let people watch, and it was over without letting people approach. Although he now knew that most of the boxes seemed to be filled with stones and hay. Not only he knew, but General Meng and Guo Zhao also knew, because the luggage carts were basically overturned when the two armies fought together. Most of the boxes were fine, but many of the locks were broken during the tumbling process. Of course, we did not eliminate the artificial. At that time, the box rolled off, and some people quietly pried many locks when the box was tucked away. Only then did we find that almost all of the locks were filled with rocks and stones. Hey! See you at 8 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2271. Nikanjun actually wanted to ask if they had left the treasures in the village, but there were a lot of things along the way, especially this time their soldiers suffered heavy casualties. Did not ask. And after entering the city, Bai Shan gave a piece of gold to Steward Li and asked him to go to the pharmacy to buy medicine according to the prescription. He suddenly felt that there was no need to ask. After just living in the inn, everyone exhaled a breath, and Man Bao said, "I'll take a look at Mr. S body in a while, Yin, or, how do you feel?" The day before yesterday, she ran away and was busy, and she didn't have time to show them. Yin he smiled and said, "I don't feel any discomfort." "It's a good thing," Bai Shan said, "I'll ask someone to find a house in Jiaokang City, and we'll rent a few yards to live in." Thinking of what happened at the city gate, he frowned slightly and said, "Let Nikanjun stay with us, there is no need to live in the army. General Guo seems to be a little unfriendly to them. Although he looks very kind, they can still feel the bad intentions. According to the rules, when they enter Zizhu, Nikanjun will follow the Angzi army for their accommodation. But they have a lot of wounded now, and the total number is not too many. They can live in 1 or 2 yards. There is really no need to go to Angzi army to see people's faces." Thinking of this, Bai Shan said directly, "That's it. 2 more yards will be set up at that time, and everyone will live nearby." Nikanjun just arranged his subordinates, and when he wanted to come over and ask when they would report to the Angzi army, he couldn't help but froze. Wei Xingren was worried, if the Duhufa comes to ask. Let's just say that we have to go out of the city to find people to find things. We need people to protect us when we enter and leave the city. It's more convenient to live nearby. Man Bayadao, we don't need Angzi army to worry about the expenses, we will solve it ourselves. Nikanjun, it seems to be quite generous. Wei Xingren responded. This is the role of Mr. Zhuang and the two pedestrians. The communication with the local officials was that they came from Honglu Temple. As the chief official, Zhou Man was only responsible for finding the recipe. When things are settled, everyone will act on their own. But before that, they had to wash up and eat a full meal. They are now sleepy the second, but dirty and hungry first. So the group of them called a lot of hot water, and they washed and rinsed in the house. Fortunately, the inn used to be a national level, otherwise they would not be able to get so much hot water in the western regions for a while. Man Bao took a shower, wringed his hair dry, combed it, and went downstairs with a flushed face. The guy at the station glanced and saw that he was about to come up, but when he looked up and saw the person, he was startled. Man Bao looked at him blankly and asked, "Where are they?" The guy came back to his senses, and quickly pointed to the front and said, "Yes, in front." Man Bao went to the front. The back is the place to live, and the front is the place for meals and entertainment. This layout is similar to the post station in the capital. Before she arrived, she heard the voice of the steward accusing him in the morning. She went around the door and saw Bai Shanzheng smilingly saying to the steward, "General Guo is worrying too much, it's really because I'm waiting for the journey, and my body is dirty." "Very, how dare you disturb the general with such a dirty look?" "That's why I stayed at the inn first." He said, "If the general misunderstands, why don't the major general help the steward with a good word or two?" Guo Zhao, who had been sitting at the table drinking tea, was stunned when he heard it. He looked up at Bai Shan, and then at the steward. He simply nodded and said generously, "Okay." The steward was about to kneel down. How could he dare to let Lang Jun intercede for him? It's fine if he doesn't say it, but once he says it, he really doesn't need his old life. The manager wants to cry but has no tears. How did he know that this errand was so difficult? If I knew earlier he wouldn't rob it. Before I came, I thought that it was just to embarrass the son of the Lu family. The envoys accompanying him were all incidental. Before coming, he had asked the soldier carefully. Except for an old man, the envoy had some qualifications. That is, Nikanjun has something to say. But Nikan's army is led by the army. As soon as he enters the city, he will report to the barracks. Isn't the rest just a few young gentlemen and little ladies? They are just embarrassing people, not low-level embarrassments. They are all good things, but they are just to see the jokes of the Lu family son and let the general have something to say to the adults of the Lu family in the future. Who knew they were so difficult, can't even invite anyone. Bai Shanyi had just finished grooming, and Bai Erlang and the others were still dawdling on it, so at this time he was the only one in front of the manager, and when he turned his head to see Man Bao coming down, he smiled and said, "How are you?" Man Bao nodded, came over and nodded to Guo Zhao, then sat down opposite him, and saw that there were snacks on the table. She tucked them up to eat. The small snacks on the table in the station are just to give people a sweet mouth, so not only are there small ones, but they are all eaten in 3 or 2 times. Bai Shan sees it and asks, "Hungry?" Man Bao nodded. Bai Shan said, "I asked Steward Li to go out and inquire about nearby restaurants. We'll go out to eat later." Guo Zhao said, "Why don't you ask me?" The steward, who was about to answer, choked for a moment, and immediately followed, "Master Zhou, our general has set up a banquet in the mansion, and we are waiting for the adults to go." He said, "The adults came from a long way and refused to live in our general's mansion, but it is still necessary to catch up with the wind and dust, and please don't refuse any more. At this time, it was a lot of sincere respect. While Man Bao was still pondering whether to agree or refuse, there was already a calm voice, "General Lao is bothering you." Mr. Zhuang came out from behind with a smile. Man Bao and Bai Shan hurriedly stood up and saluted, and asked the husband to sit down. Mr. Zhuang smiled at the two of them, and then said to the steward, "We will go, I don't know when the banquet is." Guo Zhao looked at the steward with a smile but not a smile. A drop of cold sweat slid down the steward's forehead and said, "The seat will be opened at sushi." Man Bao and Bai Shan couldn't help but go to see him. It was getting dark at the end of the day, and it was not long outside. They didn't eat lunch or dinner, so they were waiting for a drink at night. The steward also seemed to realize that he had made a mistake and hurriedly wanted to make up for it. Mr. Zhuang smiled thoughtfully, "Please don't worry, General, we will be there on time. I wonder how many adults are there? I lost a lot of luggage, and the souvenirs I brought to the General from the capital are also, it is really rude." The steward has hurriedly said, "Where, the adults are very happy to come to the General. It is not a secret that they encountered the Tubo army." The steward guessed that they might have lost a lot of luggage, and they might not even have much gold and silver. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2272. After all, even if the Tubo army didn't grab it, the luggage lost on the battlefield would be unowned, and their Angzi army would have collected some of it. But Guo Zhao, who knew the truth, frowned slightly, thinking that their belongings had been robbed by thieves before, and the things in the luggage were replaced with stones and hay. Although he didn't quite understand why he brought these cumbersome things, it didn't hinder him. He sympathizes with them. So soon after he left, someone sent Chen Yi 2 ingots of silver, 1 ingot of 10 taels. The servant who came to send the money lowered his head and said, "Our Lord Lang said that if the adults want to play in the future, he can show them a way after he is busy for a while, be a guide, etc., and also invite the adults. Don't despise it. Man Bao doesn't dislike it, but it's not good to take people's money for no reason. But it doesn't look good if you push and refuse." Thinking of this, Man Bao reached out and took it, and even looked at Bai Shan with her eyes. Seeing that he agreed, she took it happily, and then said to the servant, "We know, thank you for us, Mr. By the way, if he has any incurable injury in the future, he will come to me. I have no long possessions, and I can barely use my medical skills." This was the first time someone expressed gratitude by seeing a doctor. The little servant didn't find any good words for a while, so he could only bow his head dryly and say yes. When the people left, Man Bao gave Bai Shan a piece of silver. Bai Shan took it with a smile, and said to her, "This General Guo is different from his father." Man Bao also felt that they were different. Although they had never met General Guo, but after thinking about it, Man Bao whispered, "I always feel that this General Guo is a little stingy." Bai Shan nodded. "It is stingy. How can the grievances between adults involve small ones?" Their grievances with King Yas who did not involve their peers, but he was an adult. Because of the conflict with Lu Shangzhu, he wanted to embarrass Lu Huan several times, which was too stingy. What's more, Lu Huan is not only the grandson of Lu Shangzhu, but also the grandson of their aunt Guos. Not only stingy, but also not good. But so far the other party hasn't had too much malicious intent, so they didn't care. Bai Erlang and the others finally got out of the wash, and almost lost a layer of skin. When they came from the backyard, their hands and feet were weak, and they almost couldn't stand. He said, "Is there anything to eat? I'm starving to death." Man Bao looked down at the empty plates on the table, feeling a little guilty, looked left and right and said, "The inn is not good at this point, no meals will be provided after the meal, otherwise I will go out on the street to give. Do you buy some?" Bai Erlang, who was going to refuse, thought of Yin or others who didn't know when they would come out, and immediately nodded, okay. You don't know, Yin is so slow. I washed and wiped my hair before he finished eating a bowl of egg custard. We only took a bath when he ate something. Bai Shan said, that's because he is frail, so he is more careful with his longevity. Didn't I let you eat something before washing? What you brought out is dry food. It's been in it for a few days? I can't eat dry food in the desert. Why do I have to eat such hard dry food when I get there? Bai Erlang remembered something and said to the two of them. By the way, Lu Huan didn't like to eat it, so he passed out just now. Bai Shan and Man Bao, who were getting up and wanting to buy something for him, were startled. What? Why didn't you tell me earlier? Bai Erlang waved his hand and said, if Li Ru has rescued people, I will naturally stop talking. You go and get me something to eat? I'm so hungry that my eyes are staring. Bai Shan and Man Bao just went out. Outside the inn is a lively street. There are quite a few stalls among them. Man Bao picked it up a bit, but in fact, there were not many. Man Bao simply ordered noodle soup for everyone, and asked the vendors to deliver it directly to the inn for them. As a result, as soon as the vendors heard the quantity they ordered, they directly asked people to put the stall next to the inn, occupy an open space, and immediately put down the slices. Bai Shan and Man Bao sat in the lobby and ate noodle soup, thinking it was very convenient. Li, who was running around, arranged the meals for the soldiers. Just as he was about to come back, he saw the young master and the others were eating noodle soup, and he felt distressed for a while. Young master, Miss Man, Master Tang, and the younger ones have all inquired about them. There is a restaurant in the distance, the food in his family is not bad, but it is past the lunch hour, and it is not time for dinner, so there is no fire in the back kitchen. This is a common thing. After all, except for the most prosperous restaurants, most of the restaurants are like this, and they only open at meal times. Li Guanqi said, the little one has already ordered food, and now they have reopened the fire, but they have to wait for about half an hour. Because all the ingredients have to be prepared. Seeing that steward Li was about to cry, Man Bao smiled and said, it's all right, let's eat this first, and then go to dinner later. Man Bao asked the staff at the inn to help bring the prepared noodle soup to Mr. Zhuang and the others who were resting in the house. Lu Huan and the others only came down, and they speeded up as soon as they smelled the fragrance. Even Yin Or sat down at the table and said, I'm hungry. Zhou Liru didn't speak anymore, just took a bowl of noodle soup and started eating. A bowl of noodle soup is just an appetizer for them. A few people put down the tableware and chopsticks, and Man Bao called Zhou Liru, let's go and see the medicinal materials that Li Guanqi bought. Bai Shans and Bai Erlang said, let's go out for a walk and take a look at the yard. If it's suitable, we'll make a decision. We'll move in tomorrow. So we all act separately. Mr. Zhuang was preparing the things he needed for the banquet in the evening. Although he said that the souvenirs were lost, he still had to bring gifts. Everyone was busy for half an hour, and then they met in the lobby of the inn, and then went to the restaurant to eat together. Nai Kenjun and Da Yu were also invited, mainly to discuss the next thing. Heavy Rain asked them, is the matter between us over? Bai Shan nodded, it's over, do you want to check out and leave? The Heavy Rain thought about it. The cloth they brought from Yumen Pass was actually still there. The main thing was that they didn't have much stuff, and they were all light cloth, so they were tied to the roof of Bai Shan and his carriage. At that time, Bai Shan and his carriage the seriously wounded were sitting, the people came out, the car came out naturally, and the cloth was also there. So they decided to sell the cloth. He said, stay a few more days, and by the way, let's see if there is anything suitable to bring back, let's take some back. Even if there are few people in the small town, it cannot be sold, but there are many merchants in Yumen Pass, and many merchants from the Central Plains dare not leave the customs, so they will go back after replacing some things at Yumen Pass. Just like Mr. Yu. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2273. Bai Shan nodded and said, "We'll settle the rest of the money to you in 2 days." De Yu immediately laughed, "It's easy to talk. In this way, it would be difficult for them to live together again." He decided to go back and take someone to find the inn again, and he could move out tomorrow. Alas, the place where the sons of these noble families live is too expensive. After talking about this, everyone talked about other things. Nikanjun said, "We don't need to go to the military camp here." Bai Shan nodded, "I will go to the protector's mansion tonight. If General Guo brings this up, I will explain it." If they didn't mention it, they naturally didn't need to mention it, but the other party acquiesced. Nikanjun was relieved, and now he has time to care about other things. "Why do you see General Guo seem to have an opinion on our mission?" Everyone turned to look at Lu Huan. "Lu Huan, why are you looking at me? I'm still a child, I don't know anything." The youngest Zhou Liru couldn't help but despise him. "You are so old and still have children." Mr. Zhuang smiled and warned him, "When you go to the protectorate, follow Bai Shan and the others, don't go alone." Lu Huan responded. Mr. Zhuang continued, "Don't randomly eat the drinks from the Duhu mansion. In short, you can eat what Bai Shan and the others eat. Be careful." Lu Huan responded, but he always felt that this advice was familiar, very similar to what his grandmother told a few cousins. Such a comparison made Lu Huan feel a little nervous. In the end, Mr. Zhuang only took 2 pieces of cloth and went to the banquet. There was no way. Although they had a lot of things, most of them were this kind of goods, and they really didn't bring any interesting local products. The Angzi de Hufa was located in the former palace of Jiaokang. The entire palace was transformed into a yamen for handling affairs, and General Guo's family lived in the palace. Although the Jiaokang Palace is still far from the imperial palace in the capital, it is also extremely luxurious and far better than the General Jadu Palace. The main reason is that the door is too high and too big, which has long been violated, but General Guo, who lives in it, seems to have no intention of changing. They entered the palace. Oh no, after entering the palace, there were servants to guide them. Fortunately, they entered through the side door. Once they entered, it was where General Guo's family lived. If they entered through the front door, they had to go through a lot the place where the yamen work has only arrived. When Hoji invaded the royal family of Jiaokang, he did a lot of looting, but things like houses could not be taken away, and many things inside were not damaged, so they saw a lot of strange scenes along the way. The banquet was held in a lobby, which seemed to be the main hall of the original royal family. The room was quite large, with desks and sofas on the left and right sides. Fortunately, the desk at the head was not high above, otherwise Zhou Man would have to consider whether to give it or not. The emperor complained that General Guo was conspiring to do something wrong. Man Bao breathed a sigh of relief. She didn't like getting involved in this kind of thing at all. Bai Shan didn't like it either, so they were a little silent after they sat down in their seats. General Guo doesn't seem to want to embarrass them on the seat, and Zhou Man's official rank is considered high in the western regions. As for the 5th rank, General Guo and the 2 lieutenants in the army are above her, and the rest, including Guo the edicts, are all under her. General Meng also came early, because he was here to support him. He was a guest. He also took a good seat. He was diagonally opposite Lu Huan. As soon as he saw them, he grabbed his stomach and slowly got up, and walked over to say hello. "Master Zhou, I'm still thinking of finding you." Man Bao's eyes fell on his stomach and asked, "The wound is open again?" General Meng made a hiss. He had already split once before when he charged, and the second suture felt more painful than the first. He said, "It didn't split, but it was bleeding." He lowered his voice and said, "Dr. Joe, I don't think my wound medicine is as good as the one you used before." Man Bao said, "There's no do ginseng powder in it, and it's all used up." General Meng looked regretful, and Man Bao said, "But I plan to make some hemostatic cream and hemostatic powder. Although there is no Sankai, the effect should be better than yours. You can ask someone to come to me to get it later." After speaking, he exhorted, "Little General Meng, you can't drink alcohol at this moment, you can't eat too greasy food, and you can't move around casually." She said faintly, "You shouldn't have come to the banquet." "General Meng, that can't be helped. This is the dust cleaning banquet that General Guo specially organized for me. If I don't come, I won't give him face. It's hard for my father to explain it later. It's no wonder that those of you who fight in war always have all kinds of hidden injuries and old diseases, not only because you are always injured, but also because you are not well maintained after being injured," Man Bao said after a pause. "But tonight's banquet is not for. Is there a dust cleaning banquet organized by our mission?" "General Meng, the steward clearly said it was for me." Man Bao, "It's a coincidence that the steward said it was for our mission." The two stared at each other. Bai Shan said, "What is there to argue about? The two sides just got together." "That's what General Guo said. You can listen to it for the moment. Tonight is mainly to connect with feelings and prepare for the future dispatch of troops to Kyozi, right?" General Meng turned to look at him. "How do you know?" Guo Zhao told him this privately. Bai Shan raised his chin and motioned them to look at the several generals who were standing not far away and talking together. "They are too loud, they have been scolding Kyozi for being ignorant, and it will be sweet as honey before next year. It's just a rumor, and after the year, they have turned against each other." General Meng was still a little stunned and couldn't react. "What rumors? Your Majesty has smallpox too. Isn't it rumored all the time here in the western regions?" Bai Shan glanced at him curiously and asked, "Why, you don't know?" "Oh, I know." General Meng looked indifferent. Of course he knew that Guo Zhao had mentioned these things to him, but why did Bai Shan know everything? No one had ever told him that. Bai Shan has already turned his head and said to Man Bao, "Let's go back and ask if we find someone. If it's close to Kyosi, let's take Nikenjun and the others with us." Man Bao nodded. General Meng couldn't help but ask, "Who are you looking for?" Bai Shan said, "A group of people." "So perfunctory?" General Meng wanted to ask, but Bai Shan had already opened the topic with a smile and asked, "Do you want General Meng to stay and participate in the Battle of Kyosi?" General Meng was silent for a while before saying, "Since I'm here, I naturally listen to General Guo's orders. However, General Guo is likely to transfer him to deter the Tubo army, so that they will not dare to attack when the Angzi army is attacking Kyosi." The reason why the Angzi army asked for help at this time was, firstly, to reopen the trade route, and secondly, because they wanted to take action against Kyosi. They could not guarantee the rear. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2274. After a few chats between the two, General Guo and his son came. Bai Shan glanced at Man Bao, and the two of them turned around and stood up, smiling at the door. General Guo brought Guo Zhao in with a smile on his face. As soon as he came in, he clasped his fists and said hello to everyone. After seeing each of them, he took the lead in coming to Zhou Man. "We have heard the name of Zhou Tai's genius doctor in the western regions." Man Bao immediately said that this was an exaggeration, and he should not be praised by General Guo. After speaking, he praised Guo Zhao behind him, but General Guo Xiaoguang is well deserved. It really is a tiger father without a dog. Guo Zhao, I always feel that my seniority is inexplicably inferior. Not only Guo Zhao, but General Guo also felt this way, and looking at his colleagues who were younger than his son, he always felt a little uncomfortable, so he smiled and skipped the matter before turning his head to greet Mr. Zhuang. General Guo was the last to see General Meng, but unlike Zhou Man and the others, he seemed to be much closer to General Meng, and he reached out and patted him on the shoulder to show his appreciation. Man Bao's eyes could not help but fall on his abdomen, showing sympathy. General Meng responded with praise without changing his face, and when he raised his head to meet their eyes, his stomach, which originally only felt a little sore, instantly felt a lot of pain. General Guo laughed and sat back to his seat, then looked at the young men brought by Zhou Man, and asked, "I haven't been back to Beijing for many years, and I don't even recognize my cousin of the Lu family. Who is it?" Lu Huan had to stand up and salute. "General Guo, I'm here." "What is it called, General Guo?" "It should be called my uncle." General Guo laughed and patted the couch beside him, then said with a smile, "Come on, our uncle and nephew have not seen each other for many years, and I didn't expect to be in a place like the western regions. See you, come over to your uncle, and our uncle and nephew will talk affectionately." Man Bao's eyes widened, and Lu Huan also looked like he had been struck by lightning. "How should we deal with this?" In the silence, Mr. Zhuang secretly glared at the children to make them return to their senses, then raised his head and smiled and said to General Guo, "Let General Guo laugh, this child is young and innocent." The first time he saw the general, he couldn't help but feel a little excited and lost his manners. "How dare I let him sit next to the general?" "Lu Huan, why don't you accuse the general quickly?" Lu Huan recovered and immediately bent over to plead guilty. Only then did General Guo look at Mr. Zhuang, and said with a smile, "Hey, is Mr. Zhuang a grandson who can manage the Chancellor's grandson while walking in Honglu Temple?" The Minister of the Ministry of Housing also has the reputation of strategic minister, which is really a reputation, but for some reason, there is a sense of irony coming out of General Guo's mouth. Mr. Zhuang's expression remained unchanged, and he explained with a smile, "Thanks to Lu Shangshu's perseverance, I will return to Lu Huan as a gentleman for a few days. I will take him out this time, and I just want to take him out for a long time." Master and father, Mr. Zhuang has this identity, he can really be the master of Lu Huan, and even in the eyes of the world who do not know the depth of their relationship, he is more justifiable than the cousin of General Guo. General Guo really smiled, and no longer bothered about this point. Guo Zhao also made a timely relief, "Father, it's time for a banquet." Then General Guo smiled and asked the steward to serve food and wine, and of course, beauties. Columns of beautiful maids filed in with wine and vegetables, graceful postures, and every move was as beautiful as a dance. Man Bao and several people stared at it again. Man Bao, Bai Shan and Bai Erlang, who thought they had seen enough in the palace, once again felt that they were hillbillies, and their knowledge was far from enough. Even Yin or Lu Huan watched. On the other hand, Zhou Liru looked up at them and then stared at their clothes, thinking that their clothes were beautiful. She felt that she had little knowledge, so this kind of thing should be normal. Maybe the big family likes to serve people like this? Man Bao also recovered from their graceful movements, staring at the wine poured into her glass. The wine was clear in color and smelled very fragrant, but no amount of fragrance could hide the fact that it was liquor. And it should be the craftsmanship of the Central Plains. It smells a little familiar. From her experience, it must be very bitter, and she doesn't want to drink it. Bai Shan also doesn't like to drink. He always feels that there is a stinky smell on the body of the drinker, so he didn't move, and planned to take it up and drink it when he needed to toast and drink. Looking at the wine and dishes on the table, the little friends couldn't help but rejoice. Fortunately, they had a good meal in the afternoon, and it was long enough, and they were not hungry at the moment, otherwise they would eat this idea when they came to the banquet hungry. That's too bad. But other guests didn't think so. After a sip of wine, someone praised, "This is a bar in Yuchen? Good wine." General Guo smiled complacently and said, "Yes, it is Yuchen's wine, this is the collection of this general. If there are no distinguished guests today, I would be reluctant to take it out. Come, Lord Zhou, cousin, I will toast you. We have fate to meet each other for thousands of miles, we all have fate." Man Bao and Lu Huan raised their glasses and said they didn't dare. Seeing that he drank the wine with his head up, they could only finish the wine in the glasses. Then they had to turn around and toast General Guo with a glass of wine. "Well, 2 cups are enough." Nai Kenjun, who was sitting behind them, drank it with relish, and couldn't help but communicate with Wei Xingren, "This is the best Yuchen wine, even in the capital, it's rare, I didn't expect that Jiao Kang could be so far away. Drink." Seeing that the generals on the side didn't seem very happy, Wei Xingren reminded Nai Kenjun in a low voice, "Nai Kenjun, it's not Jiao Kang now, it's going to be called Zizhu." Nai Kenjun also caught a glimpse of the cold face of the person next to him, sneered in his heart, but said with a smile on his face, "That's right, it's Zizhu." Mr. Zhuang, who was sitting in front of them, moved in his heart and looked down at the wine in the glass. "It's boring to just eat wine, let them come up and dance." As soon as Man Bao and the others looked up, they saw another group of beautiful little girls swooping in from the outside, and then the music joined together, and they danced along with the music. No way, who made him the most handsome? Bai Erlang and Lu Huan also got a lot of winks, and even Man Bao got 2, but Yin or none. Man Bao felt strange after counting it carefully, how come no one seduces Yin or? Bai Shan. Yin or on the side. Bai Shan turned to look at Yin or, and finally burst out laughing, probably because he is whiter than them. Everyone stared at him. Yin or glanced at them and ignored them. General Guo had been in touch with several people. After drinking a pot of wine, he turned his head and saw that they were whispering. "People.